warmer today.
And that's always a positive thing.
Yes, the snow is going to melt.
Real hope. What creates hopelessness? You know, what does create hopelessness? I think when something gets down deep inside of our head, inside of our heart, where discouragement sets in, to a point where we're convinced of negative things. Oftentimes it takes many incidences to knock us to that place. And what does create? How does hopelessness created? It has to do with our thinking. It has to do with what's in our heart. Where God is, there's always hope. And if hopelessness is around, I'm not sure where our God concepts are. Sometimes we look at people and we say they're hopeless. Then we don't see God there. If we see our own behaviors as hopeless, then we don't see God in the middle of that. So what creates hopelessness? Well, we've been looking at different things here. Hope needs a foundation. And we've been looking at some of the things that kill hope. And it never abandons you, you abandon it. Oh, I agree with that. You can just put God in for hope. God never abandons you, and you abandon God. He's our hope. We've been looking at here in Hebrews 12. It comes right after that great Hebrews 11 passage. It talks about all these people who had faith in God. Faith, as it says in Hebrews 11:1, is the evidence of things, what?
Hoped for.
Evidence of things hoped for.
Substance of things hoped for, and the evidence.
Substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. What does substance of things hope for? So in order to have faith, you must first have hope. Isn't that right?
Amen.
It's the stuff that hope is made of. Is faith. And so it's the evidence of things not seen. It's not something that you see. So hope precedes anything actual that's going on. And these people trusted God when the circumstances around them didn't merit trusting, because we often trust what we can see. The problem with that is that doesn't include God. How many see God? How many have seen God? Do you see God? We see maybe the evidence of God. We see the evidence of God in a changed life. We see the evidence of God in Jesus on the cross, who said, Father, forgive them. We see different aspects of God, but in order to follow God, it takes faith, it takes hope. And these people had faith and they had hope, and then it says, since we are surrounded by these people who've gone before us, an enormous cloud of witnesses, are we going to run this race that's set before us? How are we going to do this? It says we have this long race before us. How are we going to do it? Pray a lot. Is that what the passage says? What are some of the basic aspects of following God is that we have to cut out some things. We got to cut out sin. And I guess I would say that the first aspect of sin is what? What are some of the first aspects of sin? Unbelief. It's our thinking. We become transformed by the renewing of our mind. It's the thinking. We have bad thinking, and then we put bad thinking with God, and then God gets crowded out. What are some examples of bad thinking? What are some thoughts that really crowd God out?
Me thoughts.
Okay, me thoughts.
I won't go into detail.
Excuse me?
I don't want to go into detail.
You don't want to go into detail. Because it says here, we need to stay focused on Jesus. I think when we're staying focused on us, I think that's what I hear you saying, Mike.
Yeah.
When we stay focused on ourselves, how many know that sometimes we get empowered about what we want. And in the moment when we get empowered about what we want, it doesn't seem that bad. Until later down the road where we've gone that path for so long, we realize there's a lot of dead ends. At first, it may not seem that bad. And that really happens to be, Mike, the one thing that we've got to cut out, that I'm going to talk about. So let's throw off every weight. We talked about the weights. What are some of the weights? Say maybe the way we grew up. So that's weights. We grow up in religious thinking. If you don't go to church every week, you're going to go to hell. That's a horrible way. Go to church is fine. Stay focused on Jesus. So some of the Paul, just last time. Go ahead, advance that.
Yep.
Oh, hope killers. Hello, there. One of the things that is going to kill hope is bitterness. We talked about that before. Bitterness kills hope. It says that bitter root, it springs up, it's going to trouble you and others. Bitterness. Bitterness gets us off the path. A bitter root. Bitterness, excuse me?
Leads to a bitter fruit.
A bitter root leads to a bitter fruit. Last week we talked about our past. Your past has nothing to do with determining your future. But what determines your future is how we remember the past. Is how we remember things is going to determine things. Is our memories, what we remember and what we forget. How many? I was reading, I was in the car the other week, the other day, excuse me, and on the radio, this gal was talking about how she woke up that morning and she felt terrible. And she began to think, why did she feel so terrible? She had a bad attitude. There was a lot of negative stuff going through her mind. She was edgy. And she said, why am I feeling like this? And she remembered the day before she had this lengthy conversation with her mother. And her and her mom argued about certain things, and certain things were said, but they really had worked it all out. And they really worked it all through. But what was interesting, she said, what I remembered was the feelings of the conflict. And I forgot that we really worked it out. And I had to choose to remember that we worked it out. How many of we have to choose to remember who God is. We have to choose to remember who we are. We have to choose to remember that our feelings we don't base our life on our feelings, and the feelings sometimes take a while to catch up. And I thought that was just a good way of saying it. The past. How we remember the past, how we think about the past, has everything to do with the future. Looking back, comparing past failures. So what we're going to talk about today, one of the things that's going to kill hope and kill God in our lives is selfish ambition. How does selfish ambition look? It's one of the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5, along with drunkenness, along with a contentious spirit. There's selfish ambition. And here in Philippians it says, do nothing. That's about as clear as it can be. What does selfish ambition look like? Remember the four, well, maybe you never read it. It's just a little booklet. It's like a tract called The Four Spiritual Laws. It's one of the first tracts that I read way back when I was about 16. Someone gave me 4 spiritual laws. First law is that God loves you and He has a plan for your life. And it talks about plan of salvation. And in that booklet, I remember coming across this little statement about what sin is. That we, in many different, and it used 2 different phrases describing our sinful types of behavior. There is active rebellion, or there's passive indifference. And it says that both are the same to God. Active rebellion or passive indifference. And I thought to myself, I'm not rebellious of God. Passively indifferent? I identified with some of that. I was kind of passively indifferent. And then I came across the passage in the Bible where Jesus says, if you're not for me, you're against me. If you're really not for Him and actively for Him in your life, you're against Him. Either you're for me or you're against me. If you're not for me, He says, you're against me. That's passively indifferent. And that's the one that probably stung me more than anything. If you're not for me, Jesus says. You're against me. Most people, I don't think, would say that they're anti-God. I go to this factory every day. I'm just there an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Give people snacks. I really like the Snyder's barbecue right now. Snyder's barbecue chips, they probably eat 18 of them a day. I was having 2 rows and they were eating 36 of them a day. I guess, you know, we're not, there's some things we eat every day and there's some things maybe we wouldn't eat every day. Some people eat that every day. And I talk to people. And most everybody I talk to there, I mean, they're not anti-God. Most people are not anti-God. Are they for God? Actively for God? Well, that's a whole other story. Selfish ambition. What does selfish ambition look like? I want you to talk it over. I want you to come up with some things. What does selfish ambition look like? What does it look like? Now, we have to put it in the place where, how does it look like from people that identify with Jesus somewhat? Because it's tough. I mean, because we just can't say selfish ambition looks like this on a gold-plated center. Well, how does it look like in half-religious people? How does selfish ambition look like within a Christian's life? How? You see, now that, I think we have to go to that place. Because that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're living with. So what does selfish ambition look like? Okay. Talk a couple minutes here, and then we'll reconvene and get some ideas about how this thing looks like.